6.5, I sort of did a video on this, so it's a little bit messed up with highlights and that sort of thing. So we'll try to cope with this. 6.5 on page 335 of the text. So what we're doing here is finding the equation with the slope and a point. So I hope you watched the video earlier. In these questions here, you have the equation y equals mx plus b. That's what we're trying to find. In all these questions, we're going to find b first, and then you're already given m, and then you're going to work and just sub it in, and then end up with the equation that we want. So in this question here, m is 1. You have y equals mx plus b, and m is 1, and you want to know, and you have a point, the point 35 also, the line passes through the point 35. So there's your x value, there's your y value. X is 3, y is 5, and you sub in x is 3 over here, and then you sub in y is 5 over here and over here. Okay, so when you sub those in, you get 5 equals 3 plus b. Isolate for b and get 2 for b, and then when you're done that, you're ready just to kind of give us a final answer. And you have b is 5. You were told m was 1 off the bat, and then you sub those into the equation y equals mx plus b, and you get y equals 1x plus 2, which can be simplified as y equals x plus 2. Not necessary, but it can be. In D and other questions like this, the rest of the questions, just be careful. D has a fraction here, so your slope is a fraction, so when you sub that in here, you end up with a fraction when you multiply the D by the x. So here's your x and your y over here, x and y, 5 and negative 2. X is 5, y is negative 2. When you sub those in, you end up with a negative 5 halves as part of the equation. So add it to this side to bring it over. You end up with minus 2 plus 5 halves. And then you have to go back to the old days of adding fractions. Change negative 2 to negative 4 over 2, okay, as a fraction, because you want it to have the same denominator as 5 halves, and you end up with a half. You could also do that on your calculator as decimals. So you could go minus 2 plus, and then 5 halves is 2.5, and you end up with 0.5. Okay, so in this case you can use decimals, but there's nothing wrong with fractions. And then when you're done, b is 1/2. So when you go back and sub in, b is 1/2. That's here. So you're subbing into y equals mx plus b. b is 1/2, and you were told earlier that m was negative 1/2, and that's this guy right here. Okay. In 2A, and for the rest of these, we have some hints. Okay, I'm not going to do all the work for you for this stuff here, but I said to watch the video for hints. And it says, how do you solve these questions? So the first one says, find something with the slope of negative 3 passing through the origin. So for each of these, you need to find the slope and a point, right? So some of these have a little trick for the slope. Some of them have a little trick for the point. The first one says the slope is negative 3, and that it passes through the origin. The origin is the point 0, 0. Okay, so then you do what we did earlier with that information. Okay, and the next question says parallel to this and passing through this point. So there's your point, and it says it's parallel to y equals 2/3 x plus 5. So now we have to get the slope. Since they're parallel, the slopes will be the same. Okay, 2/3. Okay, so I'm reading right off the text. In C, it says parallel to the x-axis and passing through this point. So there's your point. And then parallel to the x-axis, remember what that's all about. If it's parallel to the x-axis, it goes this way, and a flat line has no slope, or a slope of 0. So m is 0, and when you sub that in, I did the work here for you. When you sub all this information in, slope of 0, x of 3, y of negative 6, you end up with b being minus 6. So your line just ends up being y equals negative 6. Okay, so any line that is horizontal is always going to be y equals a number. So if you know it goes through 6, you could just cheat and go y equals negative 6. Okay, same with this one here. No, sorry, not this one. No, forget that. It says this one here says it's perpendicular to negative 2/5. Okay, so the slope is then going to be the negative reciprocal of negative 2/5. Flip it, make it 5 over 2, make it positive, and then it goes through the origin. So that's the point you need. This is the one I was talking about. Perpendicular to this, passing through that. E, perpendicular to x equals negative 2. This is a really tough question. So if you didn't get it, it's no big deal. X equals 2 is this guy like this, right? Sorry. Perpendicular to x equals negative 2. x equals negative 2 is this yellow guy here, and anything that is perpendicular to a vertical line is a horizontal line. Anything with a horizontal line has a slope of 0. So a tough question, okay? So if you didn't get this one, don't worry about it too much, but perpendicular to a certain, or to any vertical line, okay? So the line was x equals negative 2. It could have been x equals positive 2, it could have been anything. If you want to be perpendicular to a vertical line, you have to be horizontal. If you're horizontal, your slope is 0. So your m is 0, and then it's a question like the one we did here, okay, in C. So that's a tough one. And the last one, not so much. Perpendicular to 4x minus 3. 4 was the first slope. Their negative reciprocal is negative 1/4. Okay, and then if you keep going, some of these questions, they are tricky. Some of these are tricky. Number 6, find the equation for the line perpendicular to this and the same b as this. Okay, so what you have to do is rearrange this. So you rearrange it. 4x minus 5y equals 20, rearranged in the y equals mx plus b form. And the negative 5y, the y is negative, so you bring it over to make it positive 5y. So you have 4x minus 20 is equal to 5y, and then divide everything on the left by 5. 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. 4 divided by 5 is 4/5. So your equation is y equals this, and that means this is your m, this is your b. The question said, I want an equation where that is perpendicular to this, so 4/5 has to be flipped to negative 5/4. So that's over here, negative 5/4. And your b, it says it has the same intercept, so the b stays the same as negative 4. Okay, so take your time with this one. Okay, this wasn't one where you probably followed me all the way through. But go ahead and take your steps. Rearrange. After you rearrange, go back and read the question. It says, I want to have a line that's perpendicular to this line. So I have to be perpendicular to this line. So I have an m that is a negative reciprocal of this m and has the same intercept of this line. So my intercept was negative 4, so it stays as negative 4. Okay, and then when you write it out,